Many readers of The Lord of the Rings sense that Middle-earth is in decline. The Third Age is full of ruined civilizations. The elves are fading. The light seems to be leaving the world. This stems from Tolkien's Catholic perspective of history as a long defeat, a struggle where good fights against evil, knowing that ultimate victory belongs only to a higher power. Arda is marred by Melkor's original corruption. Light and magic are finite resources that diminish with each age, and even the mightiest peoples face inevitable eclipse. The War of the Ring, though seemingly victorious, is itself part of this long defeat, clearing the stage for the Age of Men, rather than restoring the Elder Days. Every ruin, fading people, and irreplaceable artifact reflect Tolkien's conviction that history must first experience loss before genuine restoration can occur. In this video, we will explain why Tolkien's Middle-earth feels like it is in decline. At the heart of Tolkien's legendarium lies his concept of Arda Marred, the world as permanently tainted by Melkor. During the music of the Ainur, Ilúvatar's theme began perfectly, but as the theme progressed, it came into the heart of Melkor to interweave matters of his own imagining that were not in accord with the theme of Ilúvatar. Discord arose about him, and many that sang nigh him grew despondent. Melkor's music became loud and vain, and endlessly repeated, and it had little harmony, but rather a clamorous unison. Yet Ilúvatar revealed that even Melkor's discord would serve a greater purpose. That he attempteth this shall prove but mine instrument in the devising of things more wonderful. Arda was wounded at its very creation, and the Valar's attempts to heal it only prolonged its decline. This decline can be seen through Arda's progressive splintering of divine light. The lamps of Valinor, meant to illuminate all Arda in eternal spring, were toppled by Melkor. Their light was reconcentrated into the two trees of Valinor, Telperion and Laurelin, whose silver and golden radiance bathed the Blessed Realm. But Morgoth, with Ungoliant's aid, destroyed the two trees and stole the Silmarils, in which Fëanor had captured their essence. By the Third Age, only the 3 elven rings remain, forged by Celebrimbor not to generate new light, but merely to slow the diminishment of elven lands, preserving Rivendell and Lothlorien against the encroaching darkness of Sauron. Light and magic are not separate phenomena, they are one and the same. Every magical creation demanded the essence of its maker. As Yavanna revealed, even for those who are mightiest under Ilúvatar, there is some work that they may accomplish once and only once. The light of the trees I brought into being, and within Ea I can do so never again. When Fëanor forged the Silmarils, he poured into them not merely craft, but a portion of his will and being, as did Sauron with the One Ring. Magic was a finite resource, diminishing with each passing age, as the great works of old could never be replicated. What had once flowed through the world, the songs of the Valar, the radiance of the two trees, the craftsmanship of the Elder Days, had become mere preservation by the late Third Age. The forests grew smaller, the ancient powers slept or departed, the great kingdoms dwindled. What remained was a world lit by the sun and moon rather than immortal radiance, inhabited by men whose brief lifespans made them indifferent to the fading around them. Tolkien drew this framework explicitly from Christian theology. Arda Marred mirrors Earth after the fall of man, beautiful yet broken, bearing the scars of rebellion at every level. Unlike pagan cycles of endless renewal, Tolkien's world trended towards irreversible diminishment until a final victory beyond the world. The splintering prepared the stage for men, whose mortality allowed renewal even as the immortal races faded. Every artifact, every landscape, every spell bore the mark of loss. The light grew dimmer, the world smaller, and wonder rarer. Scholars recognize this as Tolkien's distinctive fusion of classical declension and the decline of ages from gold through silver and bronze to iron, imbued with Catholicism, in which history unfolds not as progress toward enlightenment, but as a long defeat, redeemed only at the end, beyond time itself. The world does not improve, it must first be broken before it can be truly restored. This is why the fall of Númenor feels inevitable, why the War of the Ring brings only diminishment, and why the elves' departure at the Third Age's end reads as the final dimming of an age. In a letter to Milton Waldman, Tolkien described his ambition to create a body of more or less connected legend, which I could dedicate simply to England, to my country. Tolkien sought a mythology that felt ancient, beautiful, and irretrievably slipping away, cool and clear, and redolent of the Northwest, deliberately evoking Norse Ragnarok, Anglo-Saxon ubi sunt elegies, and classical theories of declining ages. Yet this pagan framework carries a distinctly Catholic sensibility throughout. In a letter to Amy Ronald, Tolkien spoke about the philosophical core of his entire legendarium. "Actually, I am a Christian, and indeed a Roman Catholic, so that I do not expect history to be anything but a long defeat, though it contains some samples or glimpses of final victory." That philosophy was forged in blood. As a young man, Tolkien served in the Lancashire Fusiliers during World War I. He witnessed the Somme offensive, where thousands died for yards of mud, and suffered trench fever that nearly killed him. The war claimed the lives of several close friends from Tolkien's school days. Rob Gilson, a member of the Tea Club and Barovian Society, died on the opening day of the Somme offensive, July 1, 1916, while leading his troops of the 11th Suffolk Regiment near Serre. Geoffrey Bache-Smith, another TCBS member, died later in the campaign on December 3, 1916, from wounds inflicted by a shell fragment the previous month. Upon Tolkien's return to England, his battalion had been decimated, suffering catastrophic losses. The war revealed a horrifying truth. Individual courage, nobility, and sacrifice could be utterly swallowed by mechanized slaughter. No amount of heroism changed the outcome. This experience burned into him a conviction that history is not a story of progress or triumph, but of grinding, inexorable diminishment. The world has grown uglier, more brutal, less capable of beauty. The 20th century only deepened this conviction. Tolkien witnessed fascism's rise, communism's shadow, the Holocaust, and the atomic bomb, catastrophes that seemed to confirm that modernity itself was a descent into spiritual and cultural death. The Machine Age erased traditional crafts, destroyed local communities, and replaced enchantment with utility. For Tolkien, this wasn't mere pessimism, it was a diagnosis. The world was indeed falling, and his legendarium would articulate why that fall mattered theologically. The long defeat operates on multiple levels. Tolkien rejected linear progress. History is an irreversible diminishment, and redemption is beyond time itself. Catholicism says the world got broken when evil rebelled against God. Because of that damage, everything naturally falls apart and decays. Only God, who exists outside time, can fully fix it by remaking creation from scratch. Similarly, Arda was permanently tainted by rebellion and awaits divine intervention from outside of time to be remade. Not only were light and magic declining in Middle-earth, so too were its populations, the great peoples of the elder days fading as the world moved toward the dominion of men. The elves do not die of old age, they grow weary of the world, their fear, immortal spirit, increasingly dominant over their hroa, corporeal form, until the spirit begins to consume the body. They experience time as a burden rather than a gift, watching friends fade, kingdoms fall, and the beauty they once knew turn to ash. Their immortality, once seen as a blessing, becomes a curse of endless repetition and loss. This torment leaves them with an impossible choice: to sail to the undying lands and abandon the world they shaped and loved, or remain and slowly diminish into fading memories, becoming invisible to mortal eyes, lingering only as spirits of nature. Thus, the elves' choice is not between triumph and defeat, but between two forms of loss, each exacting its own terrible price. The absence of hope for the elves within the world they shaped showcases the long defeat. Even the wisest and greatest of Middle-earth's peoples cannot escape the tide of diminishment. Their choice to depart, though necessary and even noble, reads as surrender, the admission that the world no longer belongs to them. You read from the perspective of the elves who are departing Middle-earth to make room for the triumph of men. As the reader, you mourn not because departure is tragic, but because Tolkien makes you feel, alongside the elves, the terrible beauty of a world moving toward ordinariness. The dwarves' decline follows a different trajectory. Their population had always been structurally fragile. Tolkien noted that fewer than 1/3 of dwarven men took wives, many refusing marriage altogether in favor of their crafts. When catastrophic losses struck, such as at the Battle of Azanul Bizarre, where barely half of their host survived, the blow was nearly fatal. Khazad-dûm, the mightiest kingdom under the mountains since the Elder Days, fell to Durin's bane and became Moria, a tomb of echoing halls and abandoned forges. Unlike the elves, the dwarves could not choose departure, being bound to their nature and their craftsmanship. Instead, they retreated ever deeper into the earth, seeking in stone what they had lost in the world above. Their decline was not chosen, but endured, a slow fade into memory. The hobbits too diminished, though differently. Once more numerous and more prominent in the lands of men, they grew fewer and more reclusive as men multiplied. Neither war nor weariness drove them from Middle-earth, only the inexorable weight of being overwhelmed by greater numbers, forced ever westward and inward. The hobbits retreat into hiding, and their number dwindles. They become known as the Wee Folk or Little Folk, and inspire fairies and sprites of Northern European legend. Middle-earth's history is a sequence of catastrophic falls. The First Age ended with the War of Wrath and the sinking of Beleriand beneath the waves. The Second Age culminated in the downfall of Númenor, drowned by Ilúvatar as punishment for the hubris of its kings, and with it, the straight path to a man was severed from the world. The Third Age brought the War of the Ring, which destroyed Sauron, but simultaneously doomed the last enclaves of elven power and the final echoes of Númenorian glory. Yet it is the Third Age itself that truly feels like ruin. Every road Frodo and his companions travel crosses the debris of fallen ages, each step a descent into a world haunted by its own past. The ruins of Arnor lie scattered across the north, crumbling watchtowers overlooking roads no one travels, Barrow-wights haunting graveyards. Minas Tirith stands magnificent yet hollow, a white tower of fading splendor as the line of stewards grows thin and the city becomes a monument to what it can no longer sustain. Moria's vast halls, once filled with song, games and mithril, have become a tomb where ancient darkness waits in the depths. The dead marshes hide the bones of nameless battles stretching back through ages. To walk Middle-earth in the Third Age is to walk through a mausoleum, where every landmark whispers of something greater that has already passed. Tolkien deliberately constructed the Third Age as a world of ruins, where great works demand the creator's essence. Fëanor, Celebrimbor, and the elven smiths depart. Their masterworks cannot be remade. The Silmarils are gone, the Rings of Power will fail, and no new song will ever equal those of the Elder Days. The Third Age exists in shadow, diminished in magic, and shortened in lifespan, precisely because it is meant to be the twilight before the Fourth Age, when even the remnants of wonder fade into history. Middle-earth feels in decline because Tolkien engineered it to be so, a world where we do not merely read of loss, but walk constantly among its monuments. The pervasive sense that Middle-earth is in decline stems not from narrative weakness, but from Tolkien's deliberate infusion of the Long Defeat into every aspect of the Third Age. In letters, Tolkien explained his entire philosophy. I do not expect history to be anything but a long defeat, though it contains some samples or glimpses of final victory. This vision, forged in the trenches of World War I and rooted in Catholic theology, became the theological architecture of Middle-earth itself. Tolkien engineered the Third Age to embody this principle. Every ruin, every fading people, every irreplaceable artifact is a material expression of the Long Defeat. The elves grow weary and choose exile. The dwarves retreat into the earth. Ancient kingdoms crumble to monuments. Magic itself contracts and dims. These are not incidental backdrop details, but theological statements. The light that once flowed through the world, the radiance of the two trees, the craftsmanship of the Elder Days, has become mere preservation, then absence. What remains is a world lit by sun and moon, inhabited by ordinary men. What makes The Lord of the Rings so emotionally devastating is that Frodo succeeds. The ring is destroyed, Sauron falls, and Aragorn is crowned. Yet none of this stops the slide into ordinariness. The elves depart, magic fades, and the Fourth Age dawns as the Age of Men. Even in victory, there is tremendous loss. This is the Long Defeat made visible, a world where our noblest acts matter infinitely because they cannot change history's underlying drift toward diminishment, not despite it. Middle-earth feels in decline because decline itself is Tolkien's subject. It is not despair, but the bittersweet recognition that all things worthy of love are temporary and therefore infinitely precious. More videos on Tolkien and Middle-earth are on the way. Make sure you are subscribed and have pressed the bell button to see them. Please consider liking, commenting and sharing, it helps immensely. Our videos would be impossible without our kind patrons and YouTube channel members, whose ranks you can join via the links in the description to know our schedule, get early access to our videos, access our Discord, and much more. This is the Wizards and Warriors channel, and we will catch you on the next one.